one of the positive aspects is that many people have been forced to be alone with themselves to a greater extent, and forced into a sort of isolation and reflection. And to make that reflection less avoidable by staying home and disrupting their natural habits and cycles and patterns. Sort of like if you had a top going around and around in a groove or something on a table, or a marble rolling around like a roulette wheel or whatever on a table in a groove, and any sort of big event, a disaster or whatever, whether natural or unnatural, is like banging the table. If you bang your fist on the table, and it can cause the spinning object, the top or marble or whatever, to jump up out of its groove and roll off in a new direction. And being forced to be alone for a lot of people, even though there's still in that time, it seems like there's actually more distractions than ever before. It actually ends up working out that the more and more outlets for entertainment or seeming the more seeming distractions and diversions we have, they actually hold our attention less and less, and they do ultimately serve that forced looking at the reflection and seeing certain things that would normally be not looked at. Like deep fake technology or whatever, tools to create realistic media so that you can't tell what's actually real anymore, also serve to turn your attention back to your immediate experience. Once all the external sources of information can't be trusted anymore, it also serves to turn all your attention back on your primary experience. Once nothing else can be believed anymore, or at least that you finally understand nothing else can be believed anymore. Like you see, the more and more people engage in certain of the diversions, like on your phone or whatever, it's like they get less and less satisfaction out of it, so that you get the sensation of like scrolling faster and faster and faster until it'll sort of collapse in on itself like a tighter and tighter loop, so it's not satisfying anymore. Eventually you'll get to the point where the more and more diversions you have, you actually they become less and less effective, whatever the right word is there. Like with viewing and listening to entertainment, it becomes more and more personalized. All the platforms that we engage with content on utilize mechanisms that tailor the content you encounter to your preferences automatically. So rather than actually the more and more content you consume, in a way, when people are locked into this imposed self-reflection and imposed isolation, the more and more they scrabbling to try and escape the mirror by diversions and entertainment. Everything is set up in such a way that the harder they scrabble, the further and further and faster they run into more and more content, because of the simultaneous emerging of these really advanced algorithms or intelligent serviettes serving up this content. It actually just is like going deeper and deeper into a rabbit hole that is completely tailored to you. Rather than in the past, when you could go to big public events or even like classic television, you know, where it was always a communal thing. Now that you have, it's all hyper-personalized, and the more you consume, the more personalized it becomes. You end up really just facing yourself. It becomes more and more yourself the more content you consume. And it's like that scrolling faster and faster and faster, even if it is, you know, watching long form content or whatever, it becomes so hyper personalized, and that could extend even into other ways, which would be too much of a diversion. But if you wanted to start thinking about AI, like artificially generated content, even, rather than just curated but actually produced content, you end up even more corralled into the mirror. So it all aligns, it all sort of coalesces. It's all sort of all angles of the, you know, experience are all almost cooperating, conspiring, all to force people towards the mirror. And obviously that, for a lot of people, that is extremely unpleasant in a way. It's like a counter image of like, it's like a phobia or something, or like a counter point to like addiction, but like the same thing, but like inverted, where you're trying to avoid something insanely, desperately, instead of pursuing something desperately. And of course it's going to be strenuous, and there will be casualties. In an endeavor like that. In that imposed isolation of people, and that imposed and more strictly enforced reflection, self-reflection, and collective self-reflection, whatever. There's of course going to be casualties, but if you took metaphorically like a physical pursuit, like to get stronger you have to have some sort of resistance training, like for a sport or lifting weights or whatever, conditioning, or running for a marathon or whatever it is. Just as a metaphor, any sort of physical endeavor, obvious, like it's it's true that will produce growth, like advancement in that area that you're trying to advance in, but it is also true there will be casualties. Like there's always going to be people hurt in training. It's inevitable, hurt or killed or whatever. There's always going to be casualties, injuries in that training. Not everyone makes it to the highest level. Not everyone even advances. There will always be, accidents or whatever you want to call it, where it will have the opposite effect. Some are not going to be, it just won't work for everyone. But it still obviously leads to advancement. Overall, it's the only way that leads to advancement. And there's no escaping that in the plane we operate in. The plane we operate in is the confluence of two forces, which is like an intentional reality and a mechanistic reality. And they're like butting heads, those two opposing forces. Like two, in like a movie or something, if there's like a good wizard and a bad wizard, like shooting their, whatever the fuck they shoot, spells or something at each other, and they like butt heads and they stop in the middle. They're like perfectly opposing, like magnetic forces or something, a positive and magnetic force, like repelling each other. And experience happens right in the plane between those two. The one side being an intentional reality that's planned and has a purpose and is, controlled and informed and ordered, and it's perfectly ambiguous. We exist in that perfect ambiguity in the plane between those two forces butting heads, which is, the intentional, ordered force of reality, perfectly opposed by the mechanistic reality. And being that that's where we exist, that course towards advancement is also going to be a course of casualty and disaster, etc. What overwhelming majority of worldviews have in common is that they say things are not as they should be. Something is wrong. The reality shouldn't be the way, things shouldn't be the way things are. whether you take a mainstream approach to things, whether you have whatever your political leanings are, or whatever, any sort of political course, inherent in that view is that things are not the way things should be, and I have to fix things. I have a role in fixing things. I can fix things. And again, that goes back to the way things are is not the way things should be. And that fundamental axis doesn't change what side you go to, whether you take a fundamentally authoritarian approach to trying to fix reality, or the polar opposite on that political axis, like whether you're completely permissive, I believe in fundamentalist permissiveness of anything. They both are on the same side of the axis of I have to change things. Things are not the way things should be. I either have to clamp down and try to control everyone's behavior, or everyone's being too clamped down on. I need to free everyone's behavior and allow everyone's more behaviors. And they both have this view that things are not the way they should be, and I have to fix the world. The other, polarity on that axis, which basically no one falls on, is that things are the way things are supposed to be, even if it's unpleasant or whatever, there's casualties or whatever there is, things are the way they're supposed to be. And again, that applies to everyone, whether you are sort of on the mainstream narrative side of things or part of the myriad, counter narrative side of things, or the popular culture or counter-cultural worldviews. They all are basically, it's totally tipped to that side of the axis which says things are not the way things should be. And basically that demonstrates a complete lack of faith. They're all basically not a spiritual worldview on reality or the world. They're all materialist worldviews and sort of like megalomania, egomaniacal, something like that. And I don't mean it to sound, I don't want it to sound like it's a negative thing. It just is. It says, I am responsible to set things right in some way, whether that's as a leader or a follower or a member of a group or opposing a different group or whatever. It says that things are not right, and I know what's right. I have to change things. Which, again, not right or wrong, it's just the way things are, but it demonstrates a total lack of faith in the order of things. And I'm not saying maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't have a faith or no faith in the way things are, but it's indisputable that that's what it means. You do not have any faith in the course of things. You do not believe that things are going perfectly as they should. You feel that you have to intervene in the way things are. And it seems that there's always a sense that every new issue, every new disaster, catastrophe, situation is always the most important, and things are different now than they ever were, and things have to be how they were before. We have to make things back then, things make things better again, and it always seems urgent. There's always a sense of urgency that right now I have to set things right, or help set things right, or oppose what's happening because things are not the way things should be. And there's always a feeling that this is a new and urgent state of affairs. When ultimately it might be that is integral to the way reality works. That is how it's set up, and that is that other axis that is largely ignored. That it is all these aspects of reality are conspiring or cooperating or coalescing, or however you want to put it, towards certain murky ends, hidden goals, and the dimly, conspiratorial, monolithic, influenced course for reality and humanity, what have you. But there's very universally people fall on the side of that's wrong. That's wrong. Basically, that there's something wrong with that. That egomaniacal, individualistic, little God worldview. And that this is a new state of affairs, basically. And that the people in control of things shouldn't be in control. The people that are set up as leaders or set up in positions of power shouldn't be there, when it could be that that's exactly how it's supposed to be. It's conspiratorial in a positive advancement worldview direction, positive direction. And it's basically not the overall picture is not discernible from an individual perspective. And I go back to Daniel 4:17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. The New International Version says, "The decision is announced by messengers. The holy ones declare the verdict, so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth, and gives them to anyone he wishes, and sets over them the lowliest of people." What this verse is saying, what the verse says is that the way things work is not an accident, and it's not new. It says, "The Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth, and gives them to anyone he wishes, and sets over them the lowliest of people," or the basest of men. It says the Most High, he gives them to anyone he wishes, the kingdoms of the earth. And who he gives them to? He gives them to anyone he wishes. And he wishes to give them to the lowliest of people, the basest of men, the worst people. As in, it's not an accident. In reality, the world is set up. The decision is announced so that the living may know. You're supposed to be able to come to the conclusion that it is set up that way for a reason. It's not that things are not how things should be. You're supposed to come to the conclusion that things are the way things should be.